Beautiful. Thank you. All right, so welcome. We are here this afternoon to talk about family belonging. This is part of our Pyramid Practice Lunch and Learn webinar series where over the last several months, we've been just kind of taking pieces of pyramid model practices and kind of trying to look at them in bite-sized chunks. So we're really grateful. And for anyone who has been here previously, we're happy to have you back. For folks for whom this is your first time joining, we are thrilled to have you join us, and hopefully we'll see you at more of these in the future. So this is just acknowledging that this is part of our effort to support pyramid model throughout the state. Our team, the PEAK team, Parent, Infant, and Early Childhood team, we work at the Innovations Institute within the UConn School of Social Work, and we do this work in partnership with the Connecticut Pyramid Model Partnership, which is our state leadership team, and this pyramid model work is funded by the Connecticut Office of Early Childhood. So our agenda today, excuse me, is to talk about family engagement in the pyramid model. We're going to sort of just do a bit of an intro around that. And then really the bulk of our conversation will be around orienting you to a new tool from NCPMI. It's a family belonging reflection tool. And so we're really going to just take some time to talk through that and think about how we can use some of that reflection to support family engagement and family belonging within your work environment. And think about and brainstorm about how you can apply what you've learned in your work with families and with children. So that's our short agenda for today. And I think really we have one primary goal. If you walk away from our conversation today, really having bought into the idea that you can't effectively partner or work with a child without partnering with their families, that's really what we're hoping for. So we tend to say this in most of these webinars that we do, where we're not going to talk about we're not going to give you every strategy that has ever existed that supports family engagement or family belonging. But a lot of the work within the pyramid model has to do with some different kind of paradigm shifts. And I really feel like this work with families and partnership with families, that's sort of part of the paradigm shift of the pyramid model. And so we're hoping that's sort of the main thing that we want you to walk away with. Hopefully there will be other things, but that's really our primary agenda for this next hour. And just really want to acknowledge, and I think for those of you who have children, I think this will really ring true for you, and all of you work with young children, and I imagine you have seen this or this has come up in your work with families. Just really connecting with this idea that for a lot of parents and caregivers, there are sort of two primary concerns, which are, is my baby all right? And am I a good enough parent? And certainly sometimes one of those is sort of a heightened concern relative to the other. But I think it's really important that as we're thinking about our partnership and our work with families, that we sort of hold this in mind, that this is often really at the forefront of parents' minds. So before, just that gives us like a bit of a setup about what we're doing today. Before we really get into it, would love to hear who all is here with us today. And so if you wouldn't mind taking a moment to sign in to the chat and let us know your name and the age of the children you work with. And also if you'll answer the prompt, what makes a strong family partnership worth it? We know that it takes effort, right? It takes time, attention, intentionality. So when you partner with families, what are the outcomes of that make it feel worth it to you? So we'll give folks a couple of minutes to do that.
morning.
Hello?
Yes, I don't see my name here in the list.
You don't see your name on the list?
No, I'm Sonia Pavon. I don't see my name here. And it's
I
no
do.
chance to, and it's no chance either to write my name too.
I think, are you trying to get into the room with translation, Sonia?
Oh, maybe you got the Spanish one?
Well, we're currently waiting for our translator. We're hoping that they'll be on in the next couple of minutes.
Oh, okay, okay. So it's gonna be
What,
here, right? You say I have to stay here?
yes, for now, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, you're
Okay,
welcome.
bye.
Melissa and Paula, thank you for getting us started. You work with children 6 weeks to 12 years old. Welcome. Paul, infants to 5. When a parent feels supported and informed, I love it when they learn something new and have aha moments. Yeah, absolutely. Melissa, trust, open communication, absolutely. Hi, Maria, welcome. Patricia, parents have to feel like you care, important to build a relationship. Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think it's really important that we remember that we would be unlikely to like take advice from or, do something that is suggested to us by someone who we don't trust or don't feel like cares about us or has our best interest in mind. And the same is true for parents, right? So like if as a teacher or administrator, there are thoughts about, things you'd like to see parents doing, for example, to support their child. It's unlikely that they're going to try those things if they don't feel like they can trust you and like they're connected to you. Let me see. I'm just trying to scroll back to where I was. Okay. Um, a strong family partnership helps the future and the next generation to provide more support and understanding as parents themselves. Thanks, Tiana. Ayana, an LGP liaison, it's worth it when you see families attain their goals. Yeah, absolutely. Um, Kelly, what makes it worth it is when there's valuable and meaningful communication and resources going both ways. Yeah, we may be professionals in the field, but they are professionals in theirs. So exchange of information is important. I'm so glad that you mentioned that, Kelly. We talk a good bit in the pyramid model about the importance of that bidirectional communication. It's not just us giving information to families, but us also being intentional about getting information back. Yeah, absolutely. No one cares what you know until they know that you care. I love that. I bet many of us will hold on to that. Thank you so much. That's again really happy to see you all here and appreciate your thoughts about what makes it worth it to engage with families and partner with families. All right. I think many of us, or I think we have met many of you, but we haven't met everyone. And so, for those of you who we have not yet met, we're again so delighted that you're here. We are the Peak team again. Oh, Liz, go ahead.
I was just gonna let you know that Paula is here.
Oh, great. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to pause. And Paula, thank you so much for being
Thank you.
here. Um, if you could give some instructions about how to join the translation room, that would be great.
Absolutely. And I was just asking if you guys could turn on the channels, but I'll give the instructions first. Thank you. Or are we doing simultaneous or consecutive?
I think simultaneous, right? Where there's
Right.
another room. Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Buenos días a todos. Estamos listos para empezar. Solo van a abrir los canales de interpretación. Solo hay que ir al icono de mero abajo en la pantalla y seleccionar el canal de español. Gracias. Buen día. Ready.
Great. Thank you. And Liz, thank you so much for letting me know that she was here. All right. So If we haven't met you, it's so nice to meet you. We're on the Parent, Infant, and Early Childhood team at the UConn School of Social Work's Innovations Institute. And we support pyramid model work throughout the state. You often see Liz and Kate and I doing these Lunch and Learn webinars and some of the other professional development and training things. And we also have a team of researchers who help us with data collection and really help us approach this work in a data-informed way. So it's good to see you all. As a just quick refresher, again, for those of you who have been here before, you will have heard this, but always like to just do sort of a really brief overview of the pyramid model, acknowledging that full pyramid model training is well over 30 hours at this point. So I'm just going to give just a couple of minutes. It certainly doesn't do it all justice, but just to make sure we're sort of all on the same page here. So the pyramid model is a public health framework for supporting social emotional development in children from birth through, it started out birth through 5, now it's kind of birth through 5, 6, 7-ish. The top end keeps sort of advancing a little bit, but young children, right? And it's comprised of 3 tiers that sit on top of that yellow base, which is an effective workforce. And that includes all of you, right? So you can have the loveliest framework ever in the universe that is wonderful. And if we don't have people who sort of understand it and are able to implement the strategies from the framework, then it doesn't do us a whole lot of good. So that yellow part, the effective workforce, that's really the base. Tier 1 is that blue section, and these are universal supports that all children need. Tier 1 is comprised of 2 parts: nurturing and responsive relationships and high quality supportive environments. And so with relationships, we think about that in a lot of different ways: relationships between adults and children in the room, facilitating relationships among children, relationships between the adults in the room, because whether we want to or not, as adults, we're always modeling relational skills, relationships between adults and families of children who are in your care. So a lot of different ways that we think about relationships. And then high quality supportive environments includes certainly the physical space and the physical layout of the room, but also things like your schedules and routines that support a successful day, transitions and having supportive transitions, giving clear directions, and having clear and explicit behavior expectations. So those are some of the other things that go into that environments piece. The second tier are targeted social emotional supports. Not all children will need these, but all children can benefit from these. And we've particularly seen since COVID, in kind of this post-COVID world, that more children are needing some of these targeted social emotional supports, which really comprise teaching social and emotional skills. Sometimes we sort of imagine that all children will just gain these skills through osmosis, and some do. They sort of see them enough and experience them enough that they develop them, but some need a more targeted approach. And so specifically within the pyramid model, the skills that we talk about a lot are emotions identification, emotional regulation, friendship skills, and problem solving skills. So when we talk about teaching some of those skills, those are often the ones that we're talking about. And then tier 3 is intensive intervention. And this is where you're looking at a really specific intervention for an individual child. So a positive behavior support plan that looks at sort of what's going on for a child in terms of the situation sort of before you're seeing the difficult behavior, what the behavior is, and really looking at responses to behavior and skills that you're wanting to teach the child to be able to manage those situations more effectively. We talk about this a lot, but oftentimes it's tempting to sort of go right to the top of the pyramid. You know, a child's having a difficult time in class, and so like, let's go right to the top and create an intensive intervention for this child. But really, we want to emphasize the importance of ensuring that tier 1 and tier 2 are in place prior to moving to the top of the pyramid. So again, that's a really sort of high level overview, but hopefully that will give us a bit of a frame that we can, you know, can sort of anchor to as we continue this conversation. There are a number of pyramid model principles that also help sort of give us an overarching understanding of or some overarching concepts that contribute to our understanding of the model. One is that the pyramid model rests on a foundation of inclusivity, cultural responsivity, and anti-racist and anti-bias practices. We also sort of hold the principle that social emotional development is foundational for other developmental domains. You know, it's really hard to learn your colors or your numbers if you're sort of in a place of dysregulation for most of the day. That's just a really difficult thing to do. So we have to address that regulation piece before attending to the other developmental domains. We also hold that children need to be taught social emotional skills. So just like you wouldn't expect a child to learn how to read on their own or learn how to do math on their own without any teaching, we also, you know, sort of hold to children need to be taught these skills. And the focus is really on adult behavior. When the adult behavior in the room changes, child behavior changes. So that sometimes can be a little tricky in terms of getting buy-in. But that's where we focus. We really focus on adults doing things differently, and when adults do things differently, children respond differently in that situation, in those situations. So today's conversation is really looking at, or is really focused on, part of, that first tier of the pyramid model, the nurturing and responsive relationships piece of tier 1. And Kate, if you want to go to that slide, and then in just a second we'll bump to the next and I'll pass to Liz, where these are all of the components that we look at when we're talking about relationships. Certainly today we're really focused on this relationships with families piece. So with that, I'll pass it over to Liz.
Thanks, Rachel. So I'm going to talk a little bit about relationships and why they're the base focus of Tier 1. And as Rachel said, these are some of the components that we're looking at in order to create a caring community in our programs and in our work with children and families. We're all often focused on building the relationships with the children. But we also need to ensure that we're facilitating relationships between the children. And as we're going to talk about in a little bit, relationships with families, this tool is really helpful in helping us reflect on our own practices and how we can add some additional layers to our work with families to ensure that they feel like they belong in our programs. And then also relationships with colleagues, the adults that are working together to support the families and the children. Children are watching at all times. They learn from us. So ensuring that our relationships with our colleagues are supportive and nurturing and helpful is also a part of creating that caring community. So this is a quote from Walter Gilliam, who is a researcher that really has championed the work around reducing exclusionary practices in early childhood. And he says he has never seen a case where a child has been expelled or suspended from childcare or preschool setting when the parents and the teachers knew and liked each other, not once. And I think that that's a really powerful quote because it's true. You know, if you have a deep understanding and trusting relationship with families, you're able to bring up tough conversations and they trust your suggestions. They're willing to try new things. And it really creates a dynamic where both parties feel supported in the work, and therefore both parties can support the child, especially when they're having a tough time. So that it just kind of highlights the importance of relationships with the families in your care.
Liz, I'll just say the other half of that, which I think is worth highlighting too, which is that when we see either children or their families negatively, we're often more punitive against both, right?
Yeah, that's a really important part. I think that I always used to say that the negative screams and the positive whispers. And when we feel negatively about the families, we see that more frequently. When we feel negatively, when children are displaying behaviors that challenge us, we see those behaviors more often in that child. And it's hard to focus on the positive things unless you're being intentional about it, unless you're aware of that.
I have no idea what I just did to the screen. For a second, I'm sorry. We are having all sorts of technology things here. I'm just going to stop sharing, and there we go. Forgive me, guys.
I think the next slide is just talking about why it's important to build relationships with families, and how impactful it can be when you have a supportive, trusting relationship with caregivers. Again, they're more willing to listen to you. You're able to get more real information from them, and this is talking about some of the research that's done on family engagement and communication when there's a focus on safety, caring, respect, encouragement, and trust. I think those are all really key words. And we focus on the family's capacity to support their children. It's important to recognize each family's capacity and meet them where they are and support them in ways that make sense to them, make sense to their family's makeup. We support children's social emotional growth and development. We meet the children where they are. We figure out where their strengths are. We build upon their strengths. We teach them the skills that they need to ensure that they're developing in a way that meets their trajectory. Creating partnerships that provides a context for addressing challenges that may arise. As we said before, developing that relationship with the families makes them feel like they're a part of the work. And when challenges do arise, we as partners are able to work together to address challenges. And then I really find the last bullet important because as we're working with the youngest children, we really are building the foundation for families to have experiences that are positive with school for the rest of their child's life. When they feel like they're a part of the early years, it gives them some confidence in being able to, engage as the child grows a little bit more and they find themselves in different environments. This slide comes from a webinar that NCPMI did about family belonging prior to them developing this tool. And I thought it was a good way to show the different types of power differentials that we see in relationships with families. So it shows the type of power. There's power over, where it's just kind of, the professionals are exerting control over the situation. We're, training the parents maybe, or having some sort of clinical interaction with them, and they don't really get a say in the process. Power with is more family-centered services where you're collaborating. There are existing services, and family resources are kind of the way that we engage is kind of tailored to the family's needs. And then power through is really that work with families to create the things that they specifically need. And there's a nice quote that my husband uses all the time: nothing about us without us. So I think that really is important in this work, that families, the systems are usually built with lawmakers and funding in mind, and, not really family voice. So as we're working within the systems, it's really important for us to elevate that and wherever we can involve families in decision making and creation of new resources. This is a piece of, this is actually in the tool that we'll be looking at later, and it is all of the elements of belonging. So we're going to spend a little bit of time in the last half of this Lunch and Learn just going through each of the pieces of belonging that are identified here, and is just really highlighting that belonging is created with families. You can't just offer them that, offer to them that they belong, or say you belong here. It's something that, is individualized. It's really thought through with the families, and they get to say when they feel like they belong. And we'll look at each of these individually in a few slides. Some of the essentials to keep in mind as we look through the tool is that belonging is both individual and collective. What supports one family's sense of belonging may look different for another. So really ensuring that we're working individually with families and caregivers, that we're discovering what their unique needs are, where their strengths are, and we have systems in place that build upon what may work for some, but we can tailor it to all. Belonging is not conditional. Families should feel valued for who they are, not for meeting expectations or fitting into systems. So not all families are going to want to engage in the same way. Not all families are going to be able to engage in the same way, and they should still feel as though they belong. They shouldn't have to meet some sort of expectation of attending 5 after-school activities to feel like they belong. It's really individualized and not conditional. Each dimension contributes to belonging, while being present is foundational. We want to see families there. The other dimensions don't really follow an order. They're all equally important. So we want to focus on all dimensions of belonging. Dimension is the word I was looking for in the previous slide. Belonging is not a checklist. It is built through many different experiences over time. So it's not something that we can just, walk through our center and check off a list that we do this. We have this on a board, or, we did this activity and now everyone belongs. It's really built through over time, through experiences, through the families being engaged in and feeling like they're welcomed and they're really a part of the program, or really feel like they have a deep connection with the services that we're providing. And then this is a video that we found that I thought was really good, because it shows kind of an individualized approach at learning about the families to be able to create that sense of belonging.
I would encourage educators to not only ask parents about their children or their own personal family culture, but be willing and open to hear from them. Develop an environment, foster an environment where parents feel comfortable enough to share with you, because our children come from backgrounds that may or may not look like your own. Let's say the children in your classroom are from a different side of town from where you are, but you haven't exposed yourself to that environment or that culture. I encourage teachers to go to the restaurants in that neighborhood, to go to, the movie theater, whatever it is in that area, so that they can immerse themselves in someone else's culture and not always expecting the parents or the students to be immersed into our own culture, but just take the time to look to see, what are the differences, what are the special things that make that child who he or she is. I had a young child in my classroom, and she never made eye contact with me. And as a young teacher, I thought, wow, she's not being very respectful. Look at me. But I took a step back and I looked at who she was. Where did she come from? And what were the cultural practices within her family? And then I invited her mother in. It was at that point that I realized that she didn't give her mother eye contact. And that was a cultural piece, because it was a sign of respect that she didn't look her mother eye to eye. And here I am as the teacher forcing her, look me in my eyes when you talk to me. So we need to find that balance between what are the expectations in the household and what are the greater expectations within our school and in our society, and not try to change our students to have them belittle their own culture, but value both of them at the same time.
I think that that last line, you don't want, we're not trying to change anyone's culture, but we want to acknowledge everyone's culture, and getting to know where the families are coming from helps to get to know the child. And we have all of these expectations and norms that we learn about as we're becoming educators or coming into the field. And they're not the norm for everyone. So really understanding that everyone's way of being is a little bit different. And the more you get to know people, the more you'll understand their practices at home, the more they'll be able to integrate your suggestions into their practices because they'll make sense to them. I just think that's a really big piece. And I think that when she's talking about going to different neighborhoods, there's nothing that connects you to a child nothing that connects you more to a child than seeing them in their own environment. And I think in early education, that's often missed. We're in the classrooms for so many hours a day. We don't, unless it's a part of our organization, we don't usually see them at home or in their own neighborhood, their own environment. So making that effort to really see them, I think is really helpful to building that relationship, especially with the children when they see you at their grocery store that they go to weekly, and you're their teacher. That is huge in building that relationship. It really does a lot. And I'm going to pass it over to Kate, who's going to walk us through this tool that I'm going to put in the chat so everyone can have the opportunity to look through it as we're talking through it.
Thank you so much, Liz. So as we said, our intention was to kind of use this particular Lunch and Learn as an opportunity to really unpack the content. So the rest of the sort of first half of this webinar was really a little bit more of a framework. If you were new or newer to Pyramid, or if you were new or newer to the sort of approach here with respect to family engagement and family belonging and the differences in those two phrases. I think the more you do this work, the more you understand the importance of specific word choice for all of the things that Liz and Rachel in that video just shared. And then we're going to spend the rest of the time, so the rest of the hour, just really unpacking the document for you, because we live in a world where you get a lot of really great, sometimes very dense resources passed on over your desk or electronically to you. And it can often take someone else sort of sitting and unpacking them with you. And like many of the strategies within pyramid model, I think they take very sort of human-centered things like and values that are natural and help unpack like, you know, how like what would this really look like? How do I assess sort of where we are or where my practices are with respect to this particular value or approach, and you know, how can I incrementally sort of move the needle in the way that I intend. So that's what we'll do, is sort of walk through this guide in general. It is really developed around a self-reflection model. And we're going to spend the next couple of slides on each of the different dimensions of belonging, which you can see in the column here on the left. And thank you, Liz, for putting it in the chat. So if anybody wants to download it and sort of walk through it while you're here with us, that's great. We'll also send it in the follow-up. But I will get started. So this is the framework of it. And each of the slides that come after this are going to talk about one dimension at a time. So the first dimension, and this is going through the sort of visual, I'll just go back here to orient us all, the visual circle illustration from the TIES Center, which is what the NCPMI team used to further develop this tool. So we're going to walk through each of these dimensions just to give you a visual, because we know that visuals and sort of behavior expectations are important in pyramids. We want to give them to you as well during this webinar. Okay, so the first dimension of being invited, families are regularly asked to join in activities, share their ideas, and help decide what happens. And I think the latter part of that is the most important, right? Help decide what happens, so that you're not only invited to a very prescribed task or part, but there's some dynamic give and take in between. Some examples there are: the program's mission includes a clear premise to partner with families. Families are asked to share their ideas, goals, and preferences beyond completing forms or surveys. Further example of that is through in-person conversations at drop-off, during conferences, via photo sharing apps, on a family bulletin board. Invitations are warm and built on relationships, using language like, "We'd love to learn from you about what matters to your family," right? So again, where a highlight where language choice is really important. And, you know, we often talk about the fact that kids should never be asked to explain, you know, what happened for the first, or identify an emotion when they're in trouble or upset. This is, you know, a lot of this is really talking about strategies to do the same for families. So don't just reach out when there's a problem or a conflict, but help them hear from you when there's, you know, even very positive small moments. And a lot of the technology around photo sharing or sort of messaging apps makes that liftable and easier, you know, not such high a burden. But even if it's just, you know, there's, you know, sort of preset like half sheet note cards where, you know, you have the goal between you and your co-teacher to send 2 home a week, right? So not having you, you know, document for hours at a time at night, but just something liftable where families can hear from you around positive things that their children are doing as well. So inviting them into the space. This is a component of family engagement that I think certainly got disrupted with good reason during COVID and post-COVID around ratios and, you know, parents were no longer sort of physically in space with us. And in some ways, a lot of those practices, like we need to kind of intentionally lean into them again in order to really invite families in and have them sort of feel comfortable and invited there. The next dimension is welcome. So families are greeted with warmth and care and interactions that show them that their presence matters, right? Families are greeted with warmth and joy and real interest. Practitioners take time to build caring relationships and not just complete tasks. Each family's differences are seen and valued as strengths, and families know that they're always welcome, even when they cannot be there. And with that in mind, maybe the first two, would love to hear from some of you, either like going off of mute or for sharing in the chat. You know, what are some ways that you or your programs have either welcomed or invited families into your offerings, your space? what comes to mind as you hear these two dimensions read out loud and discussed?
So I can speak. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kate. So, my name's Melissa. I am the owner and director of Littlefoot Daycare and Preschool over in Thompson, Connecticut, and we're a private center. But we do a lot with family engagement. We do have a diverse group of families where ELL learners are part of our group, and we really want them to feel like their culture is important to us. So, we'll have different celebrations where families will bring in different types of food. We'll have picture walls and journal entries for families to be able to reflect and be included in on. Just open communication. I frequently do phone calls just to check in with parents, get to know the whole child, see what's going on, have feedback from the families. Those are just a few things that we do, but we do feel like it's very important.
That's great. Thank you. And those are a few, but very meaningful things, right? Getting some hearts from Liz. Paul, who's a good friend of ours from Maryland. Hi, Paul. Says, I always try to find any common interest through their child. Geography, hobbies, anything. That's great. Paul, could you share just for a minute, like, how do you pull it out from a family that you get to maybe see for a couple minutes in the hallway?
It's just noticing things. It could be noticing something on their car. It could be noticing something that they talk about. Usually I have the benefit of maybe even noticing something from their, some of the paperwork that they've done. And so by even looking at that, there's always like a hint of something that I can find that creates some commonality where it just helps to connect and build that relationship. And it's a little bit of detective work. It could be as simple as they walk in and you notice their handbag, a book that they have, anything like that. And interesting, they're showing, even if you don't know anything about that, showing interest in that shows that you're showing an interest in them as a family. So
yeah, thank you. Again, like Melissa and Paul, like both sort of simple things, but when you're intentional about leaning into them, can be really meaningful. Thank you both. Okay, so we're going to continue to walk through the tool. I'll pull the slides back up and share them. I saw one more note in the chat. Always reminding them that they know their family best. Yeah. And anything I offer in suggestion that they get to choose to implement or not implement. So a lot of sort of intentionality around sort of shared decision-making in those statements, right? Also consistently checking in during conversations, ensuring that they're understanding what I'm saying, that I haven't used too much technical speak to keep it that's great, to keep it in a non-professional language, right? So again, we might sort of use a phrase that, feels very common to us, but the importance of confirming their understanding and exposure to that as well. Thank you. Okay, so the next dimension is known. And so families are partners and practitioners take time to understand and honor what matters to each family. Practitioners build trust with families over time through real positive interactions. Practitioners show care and curiosity without making assumptions. Families are respected as the experts of their own children, something that you just said in the chat, and that practitioners note important family details such as family composition or medical events and check in when appropriate. So the next dimension is accepted. So families are respected as team members who bring important and often different experiences and perspectives. Practitioners respect each family's caregiving style. And when we say respect, it means like allow for, right? And so much of, when we think about kids coming into group-based care, whether they're 3 or 5, that we'll think about developmental differences within a child as they present, and I think we have to also think about and honor and allow for different sort of cultural or developmental practices within families. Family experiences and communication preferences may vary, and who they define as family can vary as well. And there's been lots of sort of walkaways from like donuts with dads and muffins with moms to be more inclusive of the different types of families, but making sure that we, again, like just dial up the intentionality around that when we're thinking about, family events. Even, the number of times that we've said families here and not parents, because I think our field has learned that is much more inclusive of the comprehensive adults that are important for the young children that we're working with and on behalf of. And that families do not have to change who they are to be included and involved. And again, it's just such a parallel to that idea of, the concept of that for a young child in a classroom not needing to be changed, but how do we support them to be successful with a given activity? How do we carry that same intentionality and support to their family? The next is involved. Families are a meaningful part of the environment and program life through play, routines, learning, and leadership. And you can see, like, by the description of that dimension, we're getting a little bit deeper now into this approach. Really, having them be part of the result of what's there, and not just, come in for this evening or come in to do this task. Families help create goals and plans based on what matters to them. What happens at home is used to inform and create routines, activities, and supports in the care or school environment and program. And families are encouraged and supported to consider their child's progress with the team, share their insights and questions, and celebrate growth, right? So that there's really much more equality in the contributions of both home and school, and that there's expertise on both sides of that equation, right? The next dimension is supported, which is, a word that we use quite a bit in this work, but within this framework, it's defined as families receiving the kind of help and information that they need in ways that work for them to support their child and participate in their care and education. So again, we're hearing a lot of language there around the intentionality of tailoring that, and you have to kind of do all of those other steps of invite them, partner with them, know them in order to support them in the ways that really meet them and their child's needs. Some examples are families get what they need to be true partners when possible, supports like interpreters, visual tools, flexible meeting times, and family mentors are offered. Staff check in and often with families and ask, is this working for you? And make changes when needed. So the important part of that sentence is also the very last, right? That it's not fair to ask that question if we don't have the ability to make changes, right? And it isn't just about trying to sort of, but get some buy-in to convince them to lean more in a way that isn't authentic to them. But how do we, invite that in a way that is programmatically supported to make the changes that are needed for both them and their child to be successful. The next dimension is heard. So families are heard. What does that mean in a pyramid model lens? Families are listened to, and their ideas, concerns, and insights help guide what practitioners do in the classroom and across the program. Some examples there are families help shape decisions and daily practices in the environment and program. Practitioners take time to ask families, what do you think? And make changes based on what families share. Families feel safe being honest, even when they disagree. And families have meaningful choice, input, and control in their child's experiences. Would love to pause, and I can take the slides down and just spend a minute or two with any sort of responses to the language that you see on the screen here, and any examples of how either you individually have had the opportunity to do that well, to hear families, or that your program currently does that. So we'll take down slides to just invite input as well. Anyone have a great example of a family being heard?
Hi, I'm Fiona. So one of our families part of their religion, they don't celebrate the normal holidays. So changing a lot of our plans for, it's no longer a Christmas activity. This is a winter activity. This is, we're just going to celebrate friendship. It's not Thanksgiving. We're just going to be talking about friendship. This is our friendship day. Things like that. That way they're not excluded. We're not keeping them from being a part of the group and enjoying all the fun. And that way their parents feel a lot more comfortable recognizing that, they're being acknowledged, they're being respected, and they don't feel like they need to just continue to pull their kids out whenever there's a specific activity or holiday coming up.
I think it's a great example of the difference between family engagement and family belonging, right? That you're changing the activities to incorporate the experiences and practices of all families. Thank you. Anyone else hearing that have an example or something stick out to them about this dimension? Again, we're sort of dialing up the intentionality around family belonging in each as we go down the dimensions. So we're getting deeper into it. Acknowledging that we have just a few minutes left of your time before you're pulled into whatever else is going to fill your afternoon. I'll jump to the next domain. So befriended. So families feel a sense of connection with the program, practitioners, and other families. There are opportunities to build relationships in ways that feel natural and meaningful. Examples there are families feel connected to the program staff and other families. Families have chances to build relationships with both practitioners and other families. So similarly to when Rachel and Liz were talking about the different relationships that are considered in the relationship domain of pyramid and tier 1, it's not just your relationship as an educator with the child, but how are you facilitating your relationship with other adults and their relationship with other kids? Are we facilitating cross-family partnerships and relationships? Practitioners partner with families to find ways that families can support and learn from one another. Again, just unpacking the sort of various approaches here, so that we can think about the intentionality of going deeper with all of these practices. And the next dimension is needed. So when families are needed in this approach, families are recognized as essential to the environment and the program and are appreciated for their contributions. Family contributions are valued, visible, and appreciated. Families' presence, ideas, and unique backgrounds are part of everyday life and planning in the environment and program. And when a family cannot join, staff check in to let them know that they're missed. And, when I think about this and I read this, I think back to my early Head Start days when I was a mental health consultant, and some of the structure, and mind you, that's a designer on a two-generational model, so they're going to do this well. But, a lot of their intentionality around not just supporting the individual needs of the adults in a child's family, but they would often require participation. So like at the beginning of the year, you would sign up and you were required to do a certain amount of volunteer hours within the space. And I think a lot of that was around this sort of principle of your participation is needed to sort of help build the outcomes here, but it also offered so much fertile ground for just relationships and those moments that Paul mentioned around noticing a bag or a pair of shoes or food or something, and for them to have more exposure of their child and their child's space during those many hours of a day where you're not present normally. And acknowledging that there are a lot of things that wouldn't happen without those volunteer hours within a space. So those are the different components. And again, we wanted to take the opportunity since NCPMI thoughtfully put this document together to kind of just walk that through with you, and appreciate your time and participation and the many really deep things that were shared in the chat and via you guys actually going off mute to share how this is showing up in your programs. And before you sign off, just would love for you to share in the chat just one dimension of family belonging that you can elevate within your practice right now. So what feels liftable? It could be, the intentionality of really focusing on welcoming families in or something. And Liz is putting in our April registration here. So we have a playlist for all of our lunch and learns that you can access via the chat, and we'll send out in follow-up as well. And we'll be back in April because this is officially the last day in March. So the end of April, Thursday, April 23rd from noon to 1, we'll talk about strategies to teach problem-solving skills within a pyramid model lens in a program. And with that, we thank you so much for spending an hour with us today.